Hey y'all, happy Sunday and welcome to this week's live Q&A session. This is the portion of the show where we allow YouTube to send out notifications that we're going live. If you're watching this live Q&A on replay, please scrub ahead until this graphic disappears and the actual show begins. If you're watching live and you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and put them in the live chat. But for now, grab a beverage, sit back, and relax while the countdown timer does its thing. Then we'll get started. Mellow music to sleep by. Hey y'all, happy Sunday. Hope everybody is doing well. Hope everything is going your way. This Oh man, it has been some cold stuff. Want to give a little uh, shout out to channel member Jack Matson. 47 degrees below zero in North Dakota. Yeah, that sounds like a whole lot of nope for me. Now, for those of you on Celsius, just know that 40 below Fahrenheit and 40 below Celsius is where those scales cross. So it's less than minus 40 Celsius there as well. Jack, you're a tougher guy than me. I'm willing to admit it. I mean, holy cow, that's a whole lot of nope for me. Let's start with a little bit of housekeeping. I got three things here. And the first one, as usual, I want to shout out my friend Steve at Harneal Media, who is the sponsor of Mark Lindsay CNC.com. He's a friend of mine, friend to the channel, and he is a professional at what he does. If you are even contemplating a website of your own to market your products, your services, maybe design some merch and get it out to the masses with a print on demand service that takes care of all the inventory, the billing, taxes, shipping, all of that stuff. Steve Steve is your man. Again, he's a pro. He is very good at what he does. He is very competitively priced, and you owe it to yourself to at least check in with him and talk to him about the process. There's a few of my channel members, a few friends who have talked with him behind the scenes, and they'll all share the same type of a story with you. You owe it to yourself to at least talk to him. That's Steve Nealon over at Harneal Media, and there's a link to Harneal Media in every video and live stream on my channel. He's that good. You won't be sorry. Um, the next one, I haven't developed a banner for him yet, and I do need to. I am constantly asked if I can give one-on-one, uh, do one-on-one tutoring or give one-on-one instruction, and I simply do not have the time to do that. But there is a gentleman down in Texas by the name of Bull Shanigan who is very good at just that. He has the time, he has the patience, and most importantly, he has the knowledge. There's a link to Bull's website down in the description of this live stream. You'll also find a link to his Facebook group. It's called The Make. It's a very active group. It's a very cool group. Lots of talented people over there. A lot of just flat out artists over there. And it's a close knit. Well, there you go. See, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about Steve does. He's right on it. He's right on it. Thank you. I appreciate it, Steve. Really do. He's also my only moderator. But Bull runs a very tidy ship over there, and it's a lot of fun. So I would encourage you, if you're looking for one-on-one instruction, be it in Vectric Software, Aspire 3D modeling, or the basics of Lightburn. He's expanding into Lightburn now. Um, talk to Bull. You'll be glad you did. He's a good guy. And again, the link is down in the description. The third thing to talk about is Vectric has announced the dates, times, and location of the 2024 Vectric user group meeting in the US. Now, they have not announced their user group meeting in the UK, which I know they do one every year. They are going to be at Makers Central in May, but they also have a user group meeting there at Redditch in the UK. They have not announced the dates for that, but the 2024 North American user group meeting is going to be October 11th and 12th, 2024, at the Embassy Suites Round Rock in Austin, Texas. Now, they're in the process of finalizing all the details, and they're going to start taking bookings tomorrow, January 15th. So if you follow them on Facebook, or if you are a member over on the Vectric Users Forum, which, come on, let's face it, you should be. That is probably, without a doubt, the most underused resource for Vectric software out there, is the Vectric Users Forum. You can find them, go to Vectric's website and look at support. Look down, there is the support forum. That's the one. I mean, I know there are a few members over here who are uh, regular joiners here. I saw Martin Pearson out there. He's a forum member and regular contributor. Great bunch of people. Well, if you head over to that forum, you'll see announcements being made as more details come to light. But the user group meeting is going to be in Austin, Texas, October 11th and 12th. I can't say yes, I'll be there, and I can't say no, I won't be there. It's too early for me to tell. But if you're in the Austin area, I mean, a lot of good information, a lot of good time. I mean, there it is, Rob Schuster, Sidewinder Drum, saying, have a new grandson in Austin, Round Rock. I plan on going to the conference. Well, if I make it, Rob, it'll be great to meet you. So there's your first incentive. If you've never seen any of Rob Schuster's work, check him out here on YouTube. The guy makes some incredible stuff. I'm here to tell you what. So, let's go ahead and get into the topic today. I've been focusing on the basics here lately, and this is going to be another example of those basics, and that is the alignment tools that are found in all of the Vectric software, be it Cut 2D, Desktopper Pro, V-carve Desktopper Pro, or Aspire. And we're going to talk about the alignment tools. Let's go ahead and bring up Aspire and get into it. And what I'm talking about is over here under Transform Objects, this icon right here at the far end. Now, I've had several people ask me how I got Align Objects down here in my standard drawing tab. Well, that's probably the easiest one, so we'll cover that first. We'll go into the alignment tools here. And if we come all the way down to the bottom, we have this line right here that says Show Common Tools on the Drawing tab. Just put a check mark there. If you put a check mark there, I'll turn mine off just to show you. There's nothing there. There's Offset and Layout, Edit Objects, Transform Objects. Well, if I go back here, put a check mark in it, close it, there they are. Align Objects is right above the offset. Now, it will put up the most commonly used icons from the alignment tools menu. So what I'm going to do to demonstrate these alignment tools, and we're going to go from top to bottom through all of them, is I'm going to start up here at the top where we have Align to Material. Let me close this, and I'm going to create a rectangle. Let's, and it doesn't matter how big the rectangle is, I'm just going to go like that and close it. So I have my rectangle. I can select that rectangle and go into my alignment tools, and I can align that vector to my material, regardless of where my X, Y datum position is set. I can align it horizontally to the material and center it by just clicking right here. And now it's aligned horizontally. Let me Control Z to undo that. And I'm going to wear out Control Z because it's easier for me to do it that way. I can align it vertically to the material, and that centers it up vertically, puts it on my in the center in the Y direction. Control Z. Or this one here, it does both at the same time and puts it in the center of the material. Now, a second ago, I said regardless of where your XY datum position is. Let me Control Z to undo that move. I'll go back into Job Setup, and I'll change my XY datum position to the bottom left corner. Click OK. Now I've got my X0, Y0 here. I select my vector and center it, and it goes to the center of the material. So it doesn't matter where your XY0 is, it's going to align it to the material. Okay, I'm going to leave it there for now for this demonstration. And I'm going to go ahead back, and I'm going to change my XY datum position back to the center because it's easier for me to lay out a project that way. Well, now, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this on another layer. So I'll right click, copy to new layer, and let's make it blue. There we go. So now I've got my blue rectangle. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to turn off that layer. And I'm doing that because, did I copy it or move it? Well, looks like I just copied it. Okay. I'm going to do that because I'm going to need it again a little bit later on. Well, now and those three icons are also right down here since I put them on the desktop right here in the drawing tab. Well, now we have these icons here and these icons here. If we go into our alignment tools, we have align to selection. And this can be used to align one vector with another vector. And we'll get into that right now by turning that layer back on. I shouldn't have even turned it off. And let's say I have a circle that is 1/2 inch in diameter, or roughly 12 millimeters in diameter. And I'll draw that circle over here. Then close it. So I've got my circle. Well, now I want to align this circle to this vector. Let's go into the alignment tools. And we're going to use align to selection. The thing to remember when you're aligning to the selection is the order in which you select the objects. The way to think of that is the first one you want to select is the object that you want to align. Then the second thing you'll select is what you want to align it to. So I've got my circle selected. That's what I want to align. Now I'll hold down Shift and I'll select my rectangle. And from here, it just depends on where I want to align it. And IL says, I'm guessing that means align to the bounding box of the selection. We'll get into that in just a minute. As it sits right now, we have just vectors. There are no bounding boxes selected, but we'll come back to that, Al. Now here, I can align this the same way I would to the material, yet I'm using my bounding box. I can center it horizontally. Oops, wrong one. I can center it horizontally, and that's common. I do that a lot. Control Z. I can align it vertically. Control Z to undo, or I can do both. The difference here is if, for purposes of discussion, I'll go ahead and I'll move it. This is not aligned in the center. This is off over here somewhere. Now I can align that hole with the center of this piece of material without, or the center of this vector, without this vector necessarily being in the center of my material. So again, go into Alignment Tools, select the vector I want to align, hold down Shift, select what I want to align it to, and it'll pop it right into the center of this vector. So that is to center up this whole circle, whatever you wish. We also have these icons down here with the inside edge and the outside edge. And these do exactly what they sound like they do. If you need this whole, well, let's try a different vector here, because you're probably going to not need a hole right on the edge of something without some more vectors to draw. Let's go ahead and let's create another little rectangle. I want a 1 inch by 1 inch rectangle and square, and we'll put it right there. Okay, so I've got that square drawn, and now I want it aligned to this edge inside this vector. Now, yes, I could put it into move and transform mode, and I can bring it over here and drag it about where I think it, and then zoom in and nudge it and do all that. But it's really unnecessary when I can select the vector I want to align, hold down Shift, select the vector I want to align it to, and I'll use these icons right here instead of going into my alignment form. And I want to align it to the left edge. Now, if I align it to the left edge, it's just going to move it in the X direction. It's not going to center it. So I'll go to the left edge, and now when I zoom in, the vectors are right on top of one another. So it does all the groundwork for you. There's no zooming, there's no nudging or anything like that. Now, Mike Healy has a question: can you align to a guideline or only a vector? Currently, you can only align to a vector. However, there is a workaround for aligning to a guideline, and I'll show you that pretty quick. You probably already figured out. Basically, put your guideline where you want it, draw a straight line vector on that guideline, align it to that vector, then delete that vector. So there's a workaround, but I'll demonstrate it pretty quick. Now let's Control Z out of do that. Whoops, wrong one. Z. So let's see here. If I did want this centered vertically, well, that's easy. I just select the box, then select the rectangle, and I can center it vertically here. Then I can align it to the left. So now it's centered along the center of this rectangle, and it's brought over to the left edge. Or I could take it to the top edge, or I could take it to the bottom edge. Or I could, let's see, yeah, put it in the center horizontally. And there we go. So there is that. Simple alignment. That's all that is. Let's see. Dwayne Ruthig here says, what if the shape of the big box is irregular? Well, then you have to do a little bit of fiddling. Let's go ahead and demonstrate that. Let's go into node editing, and I'm going to put a center line right here. Let's insert a point, and now I'll take that out that way. All right. So now I'll go ahead and I'll use my alignment window. Select my square, hold down shift, select my rectangle. And now if I go to the inside edge, it's going to take the position in Y of where this is located now. And bing, it places the center of the bottom vector on that corner. Okay, there is no bounding box. It takes the center of this square and places it at that corner. All right. So if I, let's Control Z that, and let's center that vertically, then go to the inside edge. It takes the outside edge. Yeah, okay, there is a bounding box, Eyal. There is a bounding box. If you take a look, that leading edge of that box is right on the point. Now, if I Control Z that back, bring it down to the bottom inside edge, and now bring it over to the left, and then just, I have to close this to do this, drag a guideline to this corner. That's where that outside edge is. So there is a bounding box. It's just not visible. So you were right, Eyal. There is a bounding box. It's just not visible. I have yet to see a bounding box for these. So re-engineering parts you have to be spot on. You just saved me some time. Well, that's what this is all about, Ellen. I'm here to tell you. Ellen has probably one of the coolest jobs I think I have seen. And you know, not only that, but it did not center the bottom, as you said before. In this particular instance, it did because it was of even numbers. But yes, you're right. It would not center it. But because of even numbers, that's basically what it did. So we can get down on the weeds in this, AO, but it's only going to prolong what else I want to try to show you. We can't go through every permutation. But what I can show you is, let me do a few Control Z's here. Whoops, get back over here because I'm Control Zing you guys. There we go. That's what I'm after. And do this and delete that point because I've got to get into other stuff too. And again, these are the basics. Get into the software and play with it yourself. Now, I know, Eyal, for instance, you said that you don't have the software yet. You can download the free trial versions and follow along and do all this stuff. And in fact, it would behoove you to do that with several different software titles just to see which one you prefer. You'll quickly discover which software title fits your style and that you feel the most comfortable with. So I would encourage you to go ahead and download V-carve free trial or Aspire's free trial, depending upon what you want to end up making. I would also try something like Fusion 360 and see which one is more you're more comfortable with. So, okay, now we also have, by the same token, getting up in here, we have the outside edge. And the outside edge is only slightly different in that we still select everything the same way. Select the item we want to align, hold down shift, select the item we want to align it to. And now we're looking at the outside edge. So if I want to put it outside up on top, I just click that icon and it brings it right up there. And again, these two vectors are right on top of one another. And again, if you wanted to center it on this vector, we can just click and off we go. Everything is automatic and you no longer have to get it and nudge and this, that, and the other. So it also comes in handy when you're creating newer shapes or creating different shapes. I mean, yeah, you could come right along here right now if this was going to be your new shape you need to create and trim it, and there you go. It's all set. It doesn't just work with squares and rectangles. Let me go ahead and delete this and show you what I'm talking about. Oops, well, Control Z, Z, Z. There we go. Now I can delete this. I had to Control Z back before I clipped. Let's say I wanted to add an arc down here and curve this bottom. Well, what I can do, kind of zoom in down here. And what I need to make sure I'm doing is I'm putting all this stuff on the active layer because that's where this layer is. This vector is. Let's see. Let's draw an arc. And I prefer when I'm drawing an arc to draw through 3 points, which means basically when you draw your arc, you indicate the start point, the end point. In this case, this is what I'm going for. And then you come back and you adjust your arc. Okay. So, all right. So we go, in this case, I want to go, here is my start point. And then here is my end point. And now I can adjust what I want that radius to be. Okay. I can either drag it out this way, or I can come over here and set my radius here. Just keep in mind that again, because we're pulling down, we're making a negative move. We're pulling down. Okay. So if you look at where it says set radius right here, it's telling me that right now I'm at negative 6.5991. Well, let's say I want a radius of negative 8. So I'll go negative 8.0. Create. Well, I drug that off because I didn't set my point. Control Z. And I'll go here to here. And let's bring it down to negative 8. Where you at? There you are, negative 8. I didn't set my point very well. Zoom in, Mark. Not 8.3. What are you doing? You're hung up on 8.3. All right, fine. Have it your way. Negative 8.3. That works. All right, we'll close. But now I realize I've made a mistake. This is supposed to be up on top. So what I'll do is I'll take my arc, hold down shift. That's what I want to align. And I'll select my vector, come into alignment tools, And I'll put that arc on the outside edge on the top. Now I'll need to invert it. I did this on purpose. It will not automatically invert whatever it is you're moving. It will just align it. And in this case, it took the center and put it in the center right up here on top of my rectangle vector. So this is a simple matter of close, and we will mirror. I do not want to create a mirror copy. Hello. I do not want to flip about the job center. I just want to flip it vertically. And there it is. Now I can take my trim and make sure I have rejoin trim sections automatically. Trim that away. Now if I select that and come down to join vectors, it's telling me I already have a closed vector. So, various things you can do with alignment, various things that you probably wouldn't even consider. So we've covered aligning two materials, aligning to a selection, the centering, inside edge, outside edge. Let's get into space selection. Now, this is something that doesn't get a lot of mention, and I don't understand why. It is mentioned in passing in a few tutorial videos, but I've never seen anybody really go into it. Maybe I'm wrong and I just haven't seen it. But this is something that is pretty cool. Now, let me select this. I'm just going to go back to layer 1 as my active layer and turn off layer 2. We may decide I need to come back to that. And I'm going to draw a rectangle. I'm going to make a thin rectangle. Let's say it's a fence picket. And I want to make several fence pickets. I want to draw several fence pickets here. Well, if I want to line them up on the center of my material, I know I can do that real easily. Just select it and click right there, and now I'm centered. And I want 6 of these fence pickets. Well, that's very simple as well. I can come down here and do an array copy. And I can say I want 1 row in Y, but I want 6 of them in X. And I can choose whether I want an offset or a gap. And I'm going to go for a gap of a 1/2 inch just because. And I don't want to group them. I want to be able to move them. All right. I want to create that copy. And there we go. I have 6 pickets. The only problem is I don't really want them all right here. I want them evenly spaced across my material. Well, what I could do is I could do the math and figure out exactly where I want these, and then enter that in my gap or offset down here. Or I can now select that one there, and I see that this edge, well, I didn't place that very well, but that's okay. I'll select this one here, put it into move and transform mode, drag it straight across. That looks about right. And I know I'm not paying any attention to numbers simply because sometimes it's what looks right and the numbers don't matter. I probably just confused a lot of people, but bear with me here. So now I want these all evenly spaced. So I'll select them all, go back into my alignment tools, and I want to space them evenly horizontally. So I've got my first vector here. Consider this my starting point. And I've got this vector over here. This delineates, not delineates, this for all intents and purposes creates a bounding box, a bounding area. So now when I click this icon right here, it's going to space all the rest of these out in between the first one and the last one. One button. If, for instance, let's see, how did I do that? I'm trying to remember how I did a few things. Okay, here we go. Let's Control Z that and Control Z that. So I have just my pieces. But now I have a rectangle here that I want them evenly spaced within the center of this rectangle. What I'll do is select all of my fence pickets, for lack of a better name. And I'm going to center them. Oops, I got to select my vector. I'm going to center them vertically. Now, I want to get into my alignment tools, and I want to center them inside the last vector. And now I'll click this icon, and it moves them inside that square and centers them. Now, this has a lot of different uses, whether you're check marking inside a vector or outside a vector. And this is the one that kind of surprised a few folks I was showing this to. I'm going to create a circle, and I'm going to put it at, let's see what I've got here. I don't even remember how big my material is. I think it's 12 inches by 12 inches. It is. So I want to put a 1/2 inch diameter circle at, let's go for -4 in X and +4 in Y. And we'll create that circle. And there it is. Now I want to create a series of circles. So what I'll do a linear array, and I'll create a total of 6 of them, again, just because. No, I'm going to create a total of 5 of them, just because. And make sure they're not grouped, copy. Okay. Now I want to create a diagonal line of circles right down the center diagonally here. Well, I've got my first circle. That's my, for lack of a better term, starting point. These are the ones that are going to be in the center. So I want to create another circle down here that will be my end point. So I will go with +4 in the X direction, which would be over here, and -4 in the Y direction, which will be down here. Create, and there is my first circle, my last circle. So I've got a total of 6. That's why I copied 5. I knew I was going to place this one here. So now what I'll do is I will select all of those circles. Go into my alignment tools, and the first thing I'll do is I'll space them horizontally. Now they're spaced evenly across. Then I'll also come back and space them vertically. Close, and there we go. The number of objects you want to create and how you want to arrange them can be easy or difficult depending upon how you look at things. And if we want to, we can take a guide, bring it over to the center, take a guide, bring it over to the center. Let's just go ahead and we'll build a grid of guidelines here on the first few and make sure that we are evenly spaced, both vertically and horizontally. Go into my measure tool and we'll look at this intersection right here. And we'll go to this intersection right here. We have 1.6 inches. Now just arbitrarily, we'll go from this intersection here up to this intersection here. We're at 1.6 inches. The centers are 1.6 inches apart this way and dropped 1.6 inches that way, all the way across the whole thing. So if you were drawing a line of holes to drill in a part, you've got it covered. These two tools right down here, I have yet to see demonstrated in any kind of a coherent manner other than just briefly in passing in another video. So get in and play with and practice them. Now, Eyal is, I'm not ignoring you here. Take the space between the bounding boxes of the external vectors in the selection, calculate the space between them, subtract the total widths of the other vectors, and distribute space evenly. I believe that's in addition to, okay, I mean, this is probably the algorithm behind this, and it may be. It may very well be. So what you could do is overshoot the number of vectors you align and then remove the unnecessary ones. Yeah, you could do that. You could do that. You could do that. There are, and I know you don't like the phrase, so I don't use it anymore. There are a multitude of ways of accomplishing the same thing. You know, um, simply put, it just depends on what it is you are trying to do. And absolutely, it's a cat thing. Absolutely. And keep in mind, these are fairly simple drawings. Okay, these are very simple vectors that I'm creating out here just to show how the tool is used. How you apply that tool is completely and totally up to you. If you're making a complex, let's say if you're drawing a complex mandala or something of that nature, you're probably going to draw 1/4 of that design first and get everything aligned the way you want it. And then copy, this quarter, do a mirror to that quarter, and then take these two and mirror them top to bottom to get your entire design. But having the ability to go in and align one object to another without without having to draw a whole bunch of guidelines like I have out here, you can do it that way for sure. So, but like I said, and like you're alluding to right now, I do want to stress again that in my humble opinion, it would best to be think about these tools in terms of bounding boxes, and it would be easier to show with the regular shapes. But the thing about it is those irregular shapes are going to be so dependent because it's going to be dependent on the project, is what I'm getting at. If one man's, an irregular shape, maybe like on this, there we go. To me, that's an irregular shape. To you, it may not be. And the shape that you're doing may be way more complex than this. And that's what I mean. You have to get in and play with it, you know, and see what it does. Because a lot of times, who can tell? Can you use these techniques to align Scrabble squares? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, that would make your chances of figuring correctly what to expect when you play with aligning square, a triangle, and an arc, a circle and an arc. Yes, absolutely. The bounding box of any regular shape is always a rectangle. Exactly, and that's what I mean. I could sit here and tell you that the bounding box of a circle is going to be a rectangle, but that doesn't mean anything until you do it yourself and you see what's happening. Then you can better uh, prepare for it. Let's do a 5-pointed star there. Close that, and we'll bring back my rectangle. And I'm going to make that the active layer. I'm going to turn off my line of circles. Well, that was a mistake. Turn that back on. And let's move that, not copy it this time, move to layer 2. There we go. So I got a blue star. Now I can turn off layer 1 and I have a star and everything else. Now, this bounding box, you're 100% right. It's going to be a rectangle. So I'll take my star. I'll select the vector I want to align it to. I'll come up here, and I'm using these icons so you can see them, basically. I could use the ones on the drawing tab. So I want to align this to the center horizontally. So I just do that. It didn't move inside. Okay. Now, if I go to align it to the inside top edge, it moves right up there like so. And this tip is right there at the top of that vector. Now, if I take it up to the outside edge, it's slightly off because that's where that bounding box is. That you have two bounding boxes in play here. You've got the bounding box of the arc as well as the bounding box of the star. So it's not going to connect. Okay. These points, let me bring a guideline down. Right there at the center of that arc. That's what these points are aligning to. They're aligning to the bounding box of that arc. Does that make sense? Because I think I confused myself. You see what I'm getting at? But this is one of those cases where you may have to come in and do the nudging. So, yes, it is important that you get some idea as to where. Yes, it's the bounding box of the star that's aligning to the bounding box of that arc. Absolutely, that's what I said. So, you may have to get in and do some nudging, and you may have to get in and do some put it into move and transform mode yourself if you're not getting satisfactory results with this. So it does operate off of a bounding box. It's just not visible. There is no bounding box there until you go into move and transform mode. Then that bounding box, well, it's not even a bounding box. It's giving you directions to pull. I think about the only time you're going to find the bounding box of this star, for example, is if I go to either distort or mirror, maybe rotate. No, I'm not getting a bounding box there. Is it using the bounding box? Apply. There is the bounding box of that star. Okay, now you can see it. Right? And you're right, it is a rectangle. So close, and I don't want to do that. So edit, undo, distort. Okay, there we go. So yeah, we can get down in the weeds in this, and we have, as a matter of fact. So let me turn off my guidelines. And another good example of when using alignment comes in handy is it gets that out from up there. So now, again, it will give you some idea. So, all right. Let's see here. How do you align guidelines without just moving them by hand? Well, you can move them by hand. The easiest way to create a guideline is to just go over here into the ruler, click and drag one. So I'll put one right here on the edge. All right. Now you see my cursor is a double arrow facing left and facing right. Okay. Right click. Now up here you have the position of the guide. You can enter a new position. Now, because this is a vertical guide, it's only going to move in X. It's not going to move in Y. There is no Y. It's a guideline. So what we can do is we can come here and we can change the position. Now, if you know you want it at +3, let's say, you can enter +3, 3.0, new position, click apply, and that guide has moved over here to +3. Or, for instance, if you know you moved it a ½ inch too far, you can use the built-in calculators in the new position. And -0.5, tap equals, and it will click apply and it will move that guide. That's the easiest ways to move a guide. If you know exactly where you want it, you can enter that dimension here. Apply, and I just put it back over here on the edge. If you are not sure what position it is and you want to move it a ½ inch to the right, we'll go +0.5. Whoops, I messed that up. -6. Put my cursor over here. +0.5. There we go. Equals. Then click apply, and it moved it that ½ inch. So that's the easiest ways to position or move around guides. And then I can just delete it that way as well. Now let's get back over here because they all had something else. Try placing the star halfway to the left and aligning the top to the top. As I said, we can get down in the weeds on this all we want to. Halfway to the left and then aligning the top to the top. Halfway to the left. Okay, you're talking about like so. And then aligning the top to the top. I'm guessing you're saying inside. And we'll go there. Oops, I got to select the vector too. Oops. There. Again, the bounding box of the star is going to reference off the bounding box of the arc. It's no different than when I moved it up here to the top. Okay? We can do a lot of what if scenarios, but it doesn't change the fact that the bounding box of the star is going to reference off the bounding box of whatever it is you're aligning to. Okay? Now, if that's not what you meant, some of this sounds like rocket science. Well, some of it might be when you stop and think about it. Because what are rockets made out of? They're made out of shapes, and you're going to have to align shapes to shapes. So, wow, we spent an hour on that, and I thought it would only be a couple of minutes. That's okay. There's a couple of questions here that I do want to get to. All right. Vortex 8 asked real early on, could you go over the template file form from last week? I'm interested in how you would use it, what kind of job it would be used for, etc. That's going to be the subject of next week's live stream. That is, I mean, we've spent an hour on the alignment tools here, Vortex, and using a template file could easily go a heck of a lot longer than that. So next week, that's what I'll do. I'll get some files prepared, get a project prepared, and I'll go through template files, how to create a template file, how to open up and use the template file, some advantages, one disadvantage, and we'll go through it all. So let's see here. Let me go ahead and pull that back. And we have a couple of other questions. One real quick one. Oz says, computers, best thing that came along or biggest pain in the butt? Yes. Yes, they're both. Personally, I'd be lost without computers. Half of what I do is on computer. And, it's just like any other form of technology. You have to take the good with the bad, and you have to take the rough with the smooth. You're just powerless to do anything about it. I mean, anything that has moving parts is going to go bad. It's eventually going to stop moving. And the same is true for hard drives or anything else. Anything electronic has the potential to overheat. So there's always going to be limitations. I mean, you have temperature ranges that you have to work with and deal with. You just have to learn the rules. And once you have learned the rules, don't worry, it's going to make up its own. So, but that's the same with anything. I mean, yeah, as you mentioned before, technology is great when it works, but the same thing with something as simple as plumbing. It's great when it works. So, one final one here from Vortex said, I find that I'm a bit conservative when designing my tool paths regarding the depth and the amount of material my end mills are cutting. Is there a way for me to be a bit more aggressive with my tool? end mills and know what they're capable of cutting versus what I think. Like I may run 3/4 inch material using a 1/4 inch end mill with a through cut using 3 passes. Well, number one, without knowing what machine you have, um, it's really hard for me to comment on that. My first three machines were made out of plywood. And just simply because of that material, it was never going to be as rigid as my Avid CNC is. It would never be that rigid. So I had to make a decision. Did I want to try to cut as deep as possible or cut as fast as possible? So I came up with what I would consider to be a good compromise in that I went for shallow passes at a faster feed rate. So that's something that you have to play with. Now, I don't know what kind of machine you have, but if you're cutting through 3/4 inch material at a 1/4 inch per pass, you're doing pretty good. What you can do is try some things. Let's go back over here to Aspire and let's move this. I'm trying to do it on the other screen over there. Let's move this out of the way just so I can focus on this vector here. If you're doing a profile toolpath to cut this shape out, you come down here to edit passes. Okay. Let's cut all the way through the material. Z equals. All right. Now it says it wants to do this. Well, let's select a bit first, Mark. Let's go into a 1/4 inch end mill. We'll select that. Now it says it's going to do it in 3 passes. So let's go into edit passes. Now you can adjust those passes here. It's going to calculate the number of passes based on what you have for a pass depth for this particular tool. Now, if I happen to know that this particular tool can cut deeper than that, or if I want to experiment, you can change the levels of these passes. Pass number 1, depth. Let's see if it'll cut 0.3. Then we'll apply. Pass number 2, I select pass number 2. Let's see if it'll cut, it's going to cut down 0.5. I don't want to go, I can't really go over that. Let's go 0.35 or yeah, let's go with 3.5 and let's apply. No, that was wrong. I wanted to 0.4, 0.4. I went the wrong way. No. 0.7. There we go. I got to add to that first cut. We'll apply. So we're going to cut 0.3 depth here. We're going to cut 0.4 depth here. And then the last pass is just going to be this, 0.5 right there, right? So we've got that. We're going to set our passes. Oops, I just undid everything. 0.3 for pass depth number 1, apply. And 0.7, apply. And we'll click OK. Now we still have 3 passes, but if we look at those passes, the first one's going to try to cut 0.3 deep. Next one's going to try to cut 0.4 deep from there. So we say OK. Now we might want to get in and adjust our feed rate here, because is that bit going to cut at 180 inches per minute going that deep? Don't know. I have to look at what I can adjust outside of my controller real easy. And the easiest thing I can control is the speed at which it's running. I can adjust my feed rate on the fly. I can also adjust my spindle RPM on the fly, but the easiest thing for me to control is my feed rate on the fly. So I'm going to start a little bit slower than this. So let's start at 140. In fact, that may be a little bit fast, but I'll try it. I can slow it down if I need to. We'll click OK. And that's one way I can experiment and see what A, my machine will do, B, what that bit will do. That's one way of checking to see how aggressive you can be. But it's not only going to depend on your project, which you alluded to. It is project specific. But it's not only going to depend on which project, but it's also going to depend on the material. It's also going to depend on your machine. I don't know anything about your machine. You may be able to cut through 3/4 inch material in one pass. I can. I normally don't because I don't have a need. But your machine may be perfectly capable of doing it. I have a 4 horsepower spindle. That comes in real handy, and it's a monster compared to the 2.2 horsepower router I was using, 2.25, 2.25. But it's got nothing on a 25 horsepower spindle on like a Morbidelli or a Thermwood. It's also not nearly as rigid. So where somebody else can cut through a sheet of 1 inch thick underlayment in one pass at 600 inches per minute, I can't. So there are so many variables. I will say if you're cutting through 3/4 inch material on a hobby machine in 3 passes, you're doing pretty good. And when you talk about being more aggressive, you need to decide how you're going to manifest that aggressiveness. Do you want to try to cut deeper per pass, or do you want to try to cut each pass faster? I don't know which controller you have. I can adjust my feed rate on the fly, and I do constantly because every piece of material is a little bit different. I've had pieces of maple that were 2 or 3 different densities all within the same piece of material. And you'll feel a bit kind of start to slow down, or you'll hear it kind of start to chatter a little bit. Well, I know I either need to up my spindle RPM or slow down that feed rate a little bit. But the rest of the board, it's doing just fine. Well, it's kind of a balance there. Now, there are a lot of feed and speed calculators out there. Vortex Tool makes one. I believe Tools Today has one. There are a bunch of different speed and feed calculators out there. But sometimes you have to develop that ear because the numbers could be absolutely perfect and you're still burning up a bit because the density of the material. You can't just say what's a good setting for hardwood because Purple Heart is different from red oak. They're both hardwoods, but they're completely different densities. You just have to kind of train your ear to listen. And if you hear anything struggling, if that bit is struggling, or it looks like it's trying to force its way through the material rather than cut, you need to either slow down your feed rate or up your spindle RPM or a combination of the two. Because a bit should not struggle. But you don't know if it's struggling until you find that. You got to find that little spot there. It's so much easier when you're using a handheld router, and that's where 99% of where that came from for me was running handheld routers. You know when that router motor does that, well, you're being too aggressive. It's the same thing with a spindle. A spindle is going to apply more torque to try to power through that. But basically, you're trying to do too much with that bit, and you can get into some serious trouble depending upon what you're trying to do. Give you an example. George Navarre has a great point here. IDC Woodcraft has a good feed and speed chart, and he does. But he also has a bit called the Beast. That's a 1/4 inch roughing bit. Come on, focus on it. You can do it, Jimmy. You can't see the edge of that bit. Come on. Come on, focus on the bit. It's not going to do it. Well, you can't see it, but that's a serrated bit. It's a roughing bit. There is nothing subtle. There you go. There is nothing subtle about this joker. Look at the cutting edge on that. This is meant to remove a lot of material right now. And it is so aggressive, it can overpower your stepper motors. So if it gets into an area and it's cutting, and your stepper says it's time to turn to go that way, the bit very easily could say, oh no, we're going over here somewhere. It's happened. I've seen it happen. Not personally, wasn't there, but I saw a little clip on a video. It can overpower your stepper motors. So just because the bit's capable of doing it and that speed and feed chart says go ahead and do it, doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do. So the only way you know is to practice, to figure it out. And you'll train that ear. And if it sounds like it's struggling, it is. So, alrighty, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Holy cow, an hour and 20 minutes almost. Those are the basics. Again, we can get in and do a lot of what ifs in any tool that we want to talk about in the software. What I'm trying to do is give you the basics and let you know what it's there and what each tool does. By all means, get into the software and start using it. Just practice with it. People ask me all the time, well, how do you know all this stuff? This is what I do. I'm always working with stuff and trying to find resources to find sources on how this stuff works. I don't always know the right questions to ask. I don't always know 100% of the answers. I guess the difference with me is I'm not afraid to fail. So let's fail and let's fail together. So next week, we're going to get into using templates, which I think you'll like, especially if you do a lot of the same project over and over again. If you don't, if most of your projects are one-offs, it may not help you. It may help you. Who knows? But it's a fascinating topic that I don't think gets enough attention. So we'll talk about that next week. I'll have some files set up that we can get into and create some templates. Channel members, tomorrow's members only live stream at 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. I'm going to present something to you guys, get your opinion on it, and we can go from there. And I'm mainly going to be talking about your projects. This coming Monday, we'll do a few other small things, but we're going to be designing some projects if you think it's a good idea. So I need your input. Don't forget to check the community tab here on my YouTube channel for the link to tomorrow's members only live stream. If you don't know what I'm talking about, or if you'd like some information on becoming a channel member, click the little join button down there by the subscribe button. A panel's going to pop up and a video is going to play to tell you all about channel membership. We have a great crew that pops in every Monday evening, and also over in the Facebook group. And hope to see you there. Channel members, see you tomorrow. Everybody else, see you Sunday. I think that was all. Remember Vectric User Group Meeting 2024 in Austin, Texas at the Embassy Suites Round Rock Hotel, October 11th and 12th in Austin, Texas. Bookings, they start taking bookings tomorrow. Yep, that was everything. So see you next week, and y'all take care. Have a great day. And thank you very much.